We're here to talk about fantasy basketball. I'm arguing with Matty G of Inside Fantasy Sports. Michael Bolton, I guess he's the referee.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I'm sending my love down the well. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Go to FanDuel.com to get started. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free and we are available on all platforms, so give it a double bang and a thumb up. 2 weeks-ish until the NBA season starts, so we have a lot of stuff coming, so make sure you are subscribed and you're not going to miss out on anything. And we are here now to debate a couple of topics. So, yeah, we'll do it. All right, it is his first time on this show. I've been on his show before, but it is his first time on this show from the Insight Fantasy Sports Show. Matty G is here. Matty, it is good to see you. I hope you're enjoying the time off. The end of your school holidays coming to an end now.
I think in Victoria where you are, they've just is the first day back.
Correct.
Yeah, back today. I still have another week of living La Vida Loca, thank God. So
you get another week.
I get another week. It's a public holiday here, though, so I kind of feel sabotaged. Like, no, we'll give you a holiday, but it's only going to be 4 because everyone else is going to get one of them. So, yeah, time for the beach today and some things, man. How have you been?
Yeah, I'm pretty good, man. It's busy. 2 weeks to go, NBA season. We're trying to, this part's always annoying. As I'm sure you're aware, you do this work through the off-season, the preseason, and then the games start, and you go, I've thought this for 3 months, but look what happened in one quarter of a game. Rob Dillingham played 25 minutes and scored 21 points. I guess he's awesome now, and I guess we need to change everything about it. And you got to go, no, settle down, pull back. But this is also, Matty, this is not what we're going to discuss here on the show, but it's also a time where you can leverage over or underreactions.
100%.
Because
people shut themselves sideways yesterday, thinking the pods wasn't starting for Golden State. Now we were just talking off, wait a second, Melton's starting. What's going? Wiggins is off the bench. So yeah. I guess these things that. People start. This is the preseason. People toy with their lineups, and and it's that confirmation bias. Like we were saying before, if we hold to these things that you're either right or you're wrong, and then it's like, oh shit, well, what do I do now? And so this is where I think strategies that people have held, start to shift, especially come drafts in the next 2 weeks. So it's an interesting time, and we've got 10 games of NBA overreactions today as well when we're recording 10, this as well.
10 games.
Okay. 10.
So there's always going to be something. There's going to be the
5 games or 10. There's just a lot of games today. There's so many.
The random, from years past, the Kendrick Nunn explosion, and there's a lot of Miami ones. There's a Jamal Cain one in there somewhere. There's always a random, this guy went off, and the Timberwolves one is interesting because it's always the key thing I think here. We'll get into some other stuff in a sec, but you play the 240 game, find a rotation. You go, well, look what Dillingham did. He's a bucket off the bench. You go, Mike Conley played 9 minutes. Gobert played 8. Edwards didn't play. Fit those 100 minutes back into the rotation, and everyone's getting squeezed. It is really hard to find how all this stuff works, but that's not really the point of what we're doing here. We're here to discuss some topics across the fantasy basketball landscape, and you asked the guests to come on and create some arguments and things that they wanted to talk about. And one of the things you came to me was with Jordan Poole, and I don't know that it's actually, it's not really an argument with me, but it can be an argument, Matty, that we're sort of here, we're providing both sides of it, but arguing against some other people, because Jordan Poole, obviously, I was relatively high on him last season. I had him inside the top 50 and it didn't work out. I expected more minutes, more usage. I expected free throw rate and assist rate to keep up, and none of that stuff happened. And that's one of those things where you can project something to happen and everything goes wrong, which it did. There are times when you can project something and then everything improves. And I'm more happy to be on the position of all this makes sense and it went wrong versus you're trying to, for no reason whatsoever, under project things or hit things in the wrong area, and you're always going to get things wrong. But, Matty, we've got information now that Jordan Poole will be the starting point guard, despite Bob Carrington and Malcolm Brogdon on this team. So, What do you want to talk about? What do you want to argue with me about Jordan
My
Poole?
thing was this. I didn't know where you sat initially. I didn't think you were high on Poole, maybe because of that, once bitten, twice shy kind of philosophy where you had him ranked. I looked down, like you've got him in like the 80s, 90s zone. And there's, again, that impetus, like you said last year. He was like, do you remember people like biting in fantasy world? Like, he's going to be the leading scorer in the NBA. Look at all the buckets he's going to get in Washington. And then he was horrible. His efficiency was an all-time travesty for fantasy owners. So they invested a pick, like you said, like top 50 pick in him. And then I saw him on the waiver wire in a couple of leagues.
Yeah, I picked him up in one league.
Yeah, people had just gone with him. So my argument I came to you with, because this is like arguing about fantasy and I couldn't find any olive branches, the closest thing I could get was olive oil and some sage.
Oh, wow.
I literally just a burn. But I thought we were going to argue about it. But I think you're with me that sometimes we're just really hard on players because of that past performance. And the people who are going to be hardest on Jordan Poole are the people who overdrafted him or traded him on cents for the dollar. And then he put in a top 75 finish of the year. And then the argument is like, but it was the end of the season, man. People are tanking. The Wizards suck. They just rolled out whatever. Yeah, but he did get better and he became a better ball handler. The confirmation of him being a point guard is good news, I think, for his value. And I just think we have been too hard on Jordan Poole. Like, he fits into this shit bloke attitude, but he was coming off a thing where he got punched in the face by Draymond Green. So I think we've got to talk about his mental health and his acclimation to a team. And I think he's more at home this year. So I actually think we can move Jordan Poole back into not top 50 territory, but 75 to 80, where we're starting to see his ADPs and totals go, I think is actually getting value when he's showing in the 90s in Yahoo ADP rankings.
Yeah, I think he's higher than that. Honestly, we talk about a lot of different things there, right? Is that he was much better down the stretch when Tyus Jones was out because he got to play point guard. And when he had the success in Golden State, he was the point guard. He was playing as Steph Curry's backup or Steph Curry's replacement, right? So that's because he can be a point guard. And he just didn't, for some reason, they were prioritizing Kyle Kuzma as a point forward over Jordan Poole, which again, when I'm doing a projection, I'm going, hey, what will they do? Will they use the point guard or will they use the guy that doesn't pass and he's Kyle Kuzma? I guess I'll go with the guy.
Let's give Kuz the ball.
I'll go with the guy who doesn't know what he's doing, even more so with the ball in his hands. Like that's not where I sort of entered that discussion. But you're right about this in terms of there's going to be a bunch of people in this. Never again, Josh, I trusted you on this last season. I'm not doing it. No way we're going back to Jordan Poole. He's a fool. He's an idiot. Whatever, right? But you have to look at everything on its merits. I got no problem. Like if I took Jordan Poole in round 6, I actually don't care. I think it's totally reasonable to expect him to get 6 assists or to get 18 points or 20 points or whatever. What did he average last season? 17, 2.5, and 4.5. Like, okay. I know it can be considered bad, but it's not that bad. Like it's okay. It's fine. And
I'm very happy to take him there. And happy to take him there.
I think you can get a lot more than that. But the other thing you mentioned, which is really interesting as well, is that people will talk, and again, there's going to be a cohort of people that go, if I was getting paid $30 million a year, I wouldn't be sad. Okay, you're a tough guy. But he was legitimately like, every time you looked at him, you go, what is this guy doing?
He's punched in the face. You put together your graphics for the show. This might be a random side note. You put your graphics package together, right? How many pictures of Jordan Poole when you Googled like Jordan Poole high res, and it's just Jordan Poole just sitting there on the court with his hands on his waist, the saddest boy like eyes, like he looks like a little puppy dog.
This is where I
couldn't get a good picture of the guy.
This is where I should have known this last season, and this is my bad in terms of projecting last season, is that when Wizards Media Day photos came out last season, there was a picture from Jordan Poole that went viral, and I immediately got it, went, oh my God. I turned it into my Facebook profile picture, and it still is my Facebook profile picture, because he's there dribbling the ball, and he looks like, what am I doing? This is a disaster. I am not happy at all. And I laughed about it. This fight is fantastic. But like that is exactly how he played. Like, I don't want to be here. I have been shook to the core of being a champion versus punch in the face, traded to the worst team in the NBA. But I do think something changed. I do think there was a change at some point. But who knows? And part of my strategy, this is, I'm not trying to read another man's mind as to like what his mental state is and has he put on 10 pounds and is he, how many birds is he banging? Like, it's hard for me to judge that. So like, that's not really what I'm trying to do. But like, there were some signs of that there. But I maybe it's fixed, maybe it's not. I don't know. But what I think the overall point is, whether it's Poole or not, Matty, to me this argument is about, don't worry about like if you had him last season and it burnt you. It's okay. It's a different year. Things change all the time. It's the same.
He's shot up. Yeah, exactly right. He's shot up to 93 now. Like, so his ADP was down in the 97s. It's gone up to 93 on Yahoo. So if Jordan Poole is there staring you in the face, and God forbid that he is there at 94, you're not going to get point scorers, assist guys, high free throw percentage guys who can get them on volume around that zone of the draft. It's like almost like just sitting there going like, hey, and you're going to be the guy in your draft room to let him go to the next 11, 13 dudes because you have a recency bias. You know, if we suspend that a little bit because of how many OnlyFans, you know, chicks that he's banging, like you said, on the side, I think we could probably happily do that. But we hold to these things a lot in fantasy, and we're missing the point. Like, we should get the best guy or someone who fits. And man, there's a role for him this year. And I think we've just been hard on Jordan Poole because of how egregious that hurt was last year in the investment.
Yeah. I've got his ADP tracked, right, which if I was a better host at this, I would have actually created this into a graph. But from when ADPs first came out, which was August 25th, right? Yep. Jordan Poole's ADP on August 25th was 84.9. Yep. So it has gone from 84.9 and it went out all the way to 96. 96.5 is where it went to. And over the last week, it is back to 93.1. So a 10-spot change over the period of a month is a lot, but now it is starting to come back. But that still remains tremendous value. And I know that people go, you can't do it again. I'll do it again. I don't care. Like that's where the value lies, I think.
That's the point. We're not doing it again. You hit the nail on the head, dude. Like we're not going to do it at the same fucking spot. Like we're not idiots here. Like we're not going to draft him at 48. But if he's sitting there at like 88, oh yeah, like that's tasty. And that's where we should be looking for that value, not to jump the gun, but not be so hard on him as a undraftable guy. Because, you know, we love to say undraftable. Like no, he is, but at the right price.
We're going to talk about some other stuff in a sec. But before we do that, Matty, today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. You and I and everybody, there are things that scare us. There are things that we have fears about. I doubt that it's Halloween for us, but yeah, it's Halloween over in the States coming up, and I don't think it scares people, but there's always something that gets you a little bit worried. Now, one of the things I'm not scared about is drafting Jordan Poole, but there are other things in life that might bother you. Is it a crowded environment? Is it an empty environment? Is it having to talk to your missus after she's had a hard day at work? I don't know what you're scared of. Whatever it is, though, we all have fears and we can all address them. And BetterHelp and therapy is a great tool for facing your fears and finding ways to overcome them. Because sometimes the scariest thing is just not facing our fears at all. So if you've been thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It is designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Fill out the brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Go to betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, so the next thing I want to talk to you about, Matty, is that I hear on your show and over the last couple of years, I've heard you discuss this idea of stacks, which is a very common term in best ball, especially for fantasy football in general, best ball fantasy football, which there's an understanding of what it is. You draft a quarterback, you draft a receiver, so if the quarterback throws a touchdown, he gets the yards, he gets the touchdown. The receiver gets the yards, he gets the touchdown. It's synergistic. They add on to each other. That's a benefit. I've heard you talk about the idea of stacking, and I hear people talk about this idea in fantasy basketball, and I push back on it because these things, to me, there's almost there are ways that it can go both ways. But to me, there's almost a reverse stacking effect, because if my player that I've got, player X, LeBron, gets a rebound, Anthony Davis can't, right? He can't get a rebound. If LeBron scores, Anthony Davis can't. Now, if LeBron gets an assist, that can add to Davis's points, but it's not a synergistic effect necessarily. So there's almost a takeaway factor from that idea. Now, you talk about this idea, I'm going to grab this stack of players. Explain what you mean or how you think there can be a benefit in it, because I think that there is risks of that leading to people saying that they're doing these things, and it actually doesn't work out that way.
Oh, no, 100%. And I think when I talk about these stacks, it's another way of, I guess we use, homer picks. Like, what's your favorite NBA team?
Actually, it used to be the Bulls, but I do not have one anymore.
Exactly. I'm the same. I used to be the Charlotte Hornets as a kid growing up, and they moved away.
Complete side note. So you're about my age, right? So like the two teams that were popular in Australia were the Bulls and the Hornets in like the early 90s when we were through primary school, high school. That is, and people go, Hornets? I go, like the Hornets. The Hornets and the Bulls were the two teams here, because I was a Hornets fan. I was a Bulls fan. My brother was a Hornets fan. Like that is what it was all through that time.
Yeah, 100%. Larry Johnson, man. Give me Alonzo. Give me LJ dressed up as grandmama. My first ever shoes that I got for myself was the Larry Johnson Converse Reacts.
Yep.
Like that was like my jam. So I'm talking about like some deep blood. And then they moved the team to New Orleans and they became the Bobcats and they broke my heart. I also, again, off topic, I grew up on the Gold Coast and I went through about 42 different bloody NRL teams. So I had the Pelicans, the Giants, the whatever you want to call it. No, I had the Giants, the Chargers, the Gold Coast
Titans?
Seagulls, the Titans.
Yeah.
So I was a Broncos kid growing up because they were up the street.
Yep.
You know, so, but back to stacks because it kind of fits into this theme of homers. Like, you know, if you were a Bulls fan, you might want to go out there and might be really aggressive on, let's say, taking Zach LaVine or Vucevic or someone late like a Dosunmu or a Kobe White, wherever you can get them in a draft. And that's fine for you. But I think what we have to look at, though, is the stack theory of where it falls. And there's only particular teams that you can stack. And it looks at ease of schedule, the amount of quality games I factor into it as well. Back-to-backs, they're home and aways because not every team plays more games at home. There's some that are 40, some it's 42. It's only a couple games, but the quality of games is important. And so for me, it's a way of justifying that it's okay. There are teams that I think are adverse in that. Like look at the Dallas Mavericks, for example. You could quite easily in a draft get Luka, Kyrie, and then like a Gafford or a PJ Washington or a Klay Thompson later on in your draft. But then there's that 2-game week that you need to contend with, you know, down the track in your fantasy basketball playoffs. So for me, a stack is more of a look at, it's like grabbing the best players available, not being adverse to be like, oh, I've got too many of these guys, but it's more about being aware of that because I did a whole deep dive on it. I feel like I'm talking too much in a second, so just cut me off because I know you're anti it. But I did a deep dive and I used your projections on Basketball Monster of how many quality games there are. And the most quality games that any team has this year is the Milwaukee Bucks with 19, the second most on the Lakers. Now, as you said, funnily enough, with the LeBron and AD thing, that's not a bad thing because they also have the lowest amount of back-to-backs. They're in the 13, bracket of teams. So if you grabbed an AD in pick 4, pick 5, and pick 3 LeBron sitting there, they are tied a little bit synergistically to each other because you smatter the role of the pick and roll game. But I'm not going to be adverse to picking up an Austin Reeves or a D'Angelo Russell if he falls to 92 in my draft. But 3 is like my hard cap limit. Like I won't over-invest in a team ever more than 3. But I'm also not risk adverse to being like, it's no, because there is only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's only 6 teams in the NBA with by Basketball Monster projections have 3 players inside the top 100. And there is only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 teams with 3 guys inside the top 50. And the biggest shift of that is, funnily enough, the team that's playing now is the New York Knicks, with Jalen Brunson at 18, Cat now at 24, OG at 41, Mikal Bridges at 47, and Josh Hart is a top 5 at 100. He actually falls in right at the 100 marker. So if you were to grab 3 Knicks at the right price, especially if they're ADPs, whereas OG, ADP at 91, Mikal, 47, ADP at 55, I think there is some relevance to that. But again, you're not leaning too hard into it, Josh. I don't think it's something we should go out to, let's try and make stacks. And you don't double stack. Like you don't get 3 guys over here and 3 guys here. But I think you can, if there's value around for players in the same team, to take them without being so adverse to fearing it as much as people would historically do.
That's interesting because I think the thing you say, historically fearing it, and that was something that I used to deal with a lot, and I get the feeling that idea has gone away, where people were like, I can't have 2 players from one team. So I would push back on that a lot when people would bring that up, and I do feel that idea has gone away. So I think a lot of it, and I feel like I have to over-explain things that I do and say a lot of the time because there could be different interpretations of different ideas. So the idea of like, don't be scared of getting multiple players is something I 100% agree with. Like, but it's about getting them in the right position. So like,
the right place,
if I'm sitting here and getting Austin Reeves, like you said, at 85, 90 or whatever, and I've got AD and I took LeBron in rounds 1 and round 3, cool. Like the team there actually doesn't matter that much to me. But I think where I push back on this idea is that stacking is a term that exists in other sports where people would say, well, I've got LeBron and AD. If this was a football analogy, they go, well, it means I've got to go to 70 to get Reeves because I need to complete that stack because if they hit, they're all going to blow up. And that's not really how that works because it tends to be the opposite. I guess maybe a reverse stack. I don't know. But it tends to be the opposite because if AD is out, then Reeves' value actually does go up.
Exactly. And the great use is Philly. Like Philly's the number 1 in your rankings. Like Embiid, number 4, his ADP is 7 to 9. PG is at 12. ADP 28. Jesus, Mother Mary and Joseph. And Tyrese Maxey is 31, ADP of 28. Now, if MB goes out, which we are all like collectively just singing Kumbaya and holding our breath for, if he goes out, PG and Maxey automatically get that bump. But we're not looking at anyone else there. Andre Drummond obviously gets a massive boing there, but you can pick him up off your waiver wire. So we're not also being aggressive on draft day to make, as you said, I think the big thing here is, I've got to make this stack happen. I've got to get my third guy. No, don't. If you've got two guys at the right price and value, don't keep stacking in mind as something you have to do to win your draft, but don't be risk adverse to seeing three guys, especially where there's some value tied to another guy, like the handcuff rule, because the other team is like the Sacramento Kings. Like you've got there like Sabonis, Fox, and DeMar DeRozan. Sabonis is the only one who's going outside his ADP at 14, where he could be about a 20-ish, but what he does is so valuable. So I think we can glean some value out of it, especially when guys fall late, like a PJ Washington in Dallas. Love that.
Yeah, but see, I think the difference is that I like getting him late, but I'm also like, there'd be 30 other blokes in that same spot where I would also consider them, and I don't like prioritize. I don't prioritize that based on where the team is. And I think that's what the thing is. It's like a lot of the time I'm looking at these players team independent of what I've already done. I don't care that I've got a player on my team from that guy already. Outside of the I'm not double ending Kyrie and Luka back to back in round 1 and round 2, unless I'm in a roto league, and then actually it turns into really good value, right? But it's in a head-to-head league, I'm not doing that because of the 2-game week. But if I took Luka and then Lively in round 11, that's fine. It's totally okay for me to be able to do that. But it's more like I don't necessarily care about what team these other guys are on from a positive or from a negative perspective, but it's all about getting at the right spot. So like if we didn't talk about the playoffs for like Kyrie and Luka is a good pairing if you get like Luka at the top of round 1.
Yep.
And Kyrie slides to the end of round 2, which if everything goes to plan, Kyrie probably produces that value in here. But in the games that Luka misses, Kyrie is better than that. So like you've actually got some value built into that, but I'm not drafting him because of that. It's like I've got him at actual value here, and it might go higher. The thing I think you want to avoid is like, I've got Embiid, I've got to take Drummond at pick 110 because
100%.
If Embiid plays 34 minutes, you're wasting a roster spot for 40 games, 30 games, 20 games. Like I don't know how much, 50 games, 60 games. I don't know how much you're wasting that roster spot. You might be, but you might get a couple of pop games, but in the end it won't matter because it's all about balancing that expectation versus returned production versus trying to narrow ourselves into these windows of like this team and this is the right spot. There's so many different factors, but we will one more thing we're going to talk about, which I will get to in a second, Matty. This is enlightening discussions. Before we do that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, which is America's #1 sportsbook. I actually found out FanDuel's got an office in Australia. One of my followers said, "Hey, I work for FanDuel." I go, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Yeah, we got an office down here." So they got an office here so they can do around the clock monitoring, so that people aren't working through the night. So there you go, FanDuel. Welcome to Australia, I guess. But we can't bet there, but I can talk about how they are America's #1 sportsbook. So you're watching a game, you're sitting there, you open the app, bang, you have a look at the odds, the live game odds, it's there, it's happening. You can see the live stats, you can see the live play-by-play, and you can confirm your analysis. You can confirm what's going on with those numbers, and on that same page where those stats appear, place your bet, bang, you're done. Easy. And if you are a new customer, when you place that first $5 bet, they will just chuck $200 of bonus bets into your account. It's guaranteed. You don't have to win that bet. Just chuck it on. $5, $200 comes in. Bonus bets, easy, done. So go ahead and check all of that out over at FanDuel.com. And do not forget to gamble responsibly. We've got one more coming up, Matty G. But before we do that, just give people a little bit of a plug of the old Insight Fantasy, what you guys are up to over there.
Yeah, mate. Look, leading into the NBA season, big shout out to the Insight team. We all started as we're all fans of fantasy sport and basketball. Like we met on playing NBA 2K. Actually, I know that you're a 2K guy. We met playing online video games during the COVID years, and we've come in. We do NBL, NRL, AFL, and of course NBA. So shout out to Mally, Skiddy, and Matrix, the other part of the NBA team, and to Horse and Braino. So basically, we've got content almost coming out daily in the lead up to the preseason. We've got our mock drafts. We've got our guest analysts from other shows, tips, tricks, draft advice. You can find all of that at Insight FS on X, on Instagram, and all those accounts. And you can find me at NBA GWiz, just to keep it fresh. I've got 20 takes in 20 days, like 20 thoughts of the NBA season coming up. My last one was Saar might be a rookie of the year, but I think Zach Edey is the guy that we're all going to collectively root for. Is like, oh, we like Zach. We like Edey.
Do we? I will say. I'm very, very skeptical of Zach Edey. I will say. We'll say I was very down on him. So, speaking of biases, I am biased against him because I didn't think he was going to be able to hang defensively. We will find out. He's almost without question to me the most interesting rookie. With the questions where I was like, this could be absolutely disastrous or it could be fine, but we'll find out. Last thing we want to talk about is, I think people know this, Matty, but there are a lot of people called Jalen in the NBA. And I did a mock draft the other day and I inadvertently picked 5 Jalens because...
You made a Jalen stack.
I did. They don't get a boost for names as far as I'm aware, but I did. And you can go through rounds and you can theoretically, I reckon, take a Jalen in almost every single round. But there are a lot sort of stuck in between the 18 to 50 zone. And the two that get commonly thrown out there is who do I... And I'm sure you've heard this question as well, and we all have these weird idiosyncrasies. Not me, I'm perfectly normal and fine, the most normal bloke you've ever met in your life. I don't have any of those things.
I say that all about you when to people when they ask me about you. I'm like, he's so incredibly normal.
Just
you wouldn't believe
the most normal person you have ever met in your life. There's absolutely nothing weird about me. But anyway, as I was staring at these spreadsheets for the last 15 hours, I was looking at this question that we get all the time, right? It's because, and this is how people look at it. They go, well, it's Jalen Johnson and Jalen Williams, and they've got the same name. So they're obviously got to be the people that I compare to each other because that is how brains work. Not mine, completely normal. Jalen Johnson and Jalen Williams in that area. But like I said, let's chuck a few more in. Jalen Brown's in there. Jalen Duren's in there. Jalen Brunson's a little bit higher than those guys. You could throw even the ones who go slightly off track with a Jaren. It's just 1 letter difference.
You've got Suggsy.
Holy shit, Jalen Suggs.
You got Jalen Green putting up hey, look, I'm here. I'm in Houston. Hello.
And then we've got old mate Jalen Tyson coming to the party in Cleveland, but he has to spell his name slightly different just to add another layer of confusion. But let's get back to these Williamses and Johnsons, and we'll talk Duren and Brown a little bit.
Are we talking about Johnsons? Because I thought that was...
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, there is so much Johnson talk on this show that maybe we rename it the Happy Dick Hour. I don't know. There's a lot going on here.
Basketball team called the Magic Johnsons.
That's I think my brother's old fantasy team name was Magic's Johnson, and he that was it. Anyway, we're talking Jalen, we're talking Williams, we're talking Johnson. This is a question that gets asked all the time. I feel like Williams has pulled ahead of Johnson a little bit in this area, but how do we approach this idea? Because again, these are things I find really interesting. Is the weird ways that people compare and contrast and group guys together. How are you viewing the upside of both of those players? And we'll get to the other Jalens in a sec.
I think it's fair to say there's no upside for Jalen Williams.
Oh, that's an interesting call. And I know why, but I want you to explain why.
Okay. Well, I don't think there's a massive upside like we've seen in him. I remember listening to your show a couple of years ago and the Bronco, and this is one of the things where we had a different opinion. I held on him all season long. Face injury, everything. I was like, I'm not letting this guy go. I love J-Dub. I think he's actually one of my favorite players. You just get good vibes from the guy. I love his play. I love his style of play. But when I say there's no upside to it, it's because he's already there. We're already looking at a best 35 player. Now, let's say he gets a bump to maybe top 25. That's 10 positions of value from where, historically where he's been. So do I expect him to be better? 100%. Now, I know that there's questions about his usage. Caruso's in town, Hartenstein's in his town, but we saw such a great development of him as a playmaker last year. That was the sexiest thing in his fantasy game. Watching these nigh on triple doubles, him taking the role of the Josh Giddey component almost of playmaking away from SGA, that was so good to watch. But then we have Jalen Johnson as the other Jalen, and Josh, you've been in drafts with me, man. We're seeing 2 Jalens go one after the other. It's almost like people have the 2 Jalens in their queue.
Yahoo's got them back to back, 33 and 34 on their new X rank board. They're literally next to each other.
Exactly. So people are just seeing these guys or sorting through, and so it's I'm just going to grab a Jalen. I don't care which one. They're about to fall to me. So I think what the conversation is the upside of Jalen Johnson is the tantalizing thing where people are leaning into but who else does Atlanta have coming off the bench? Is it a Kongwu? Is it what's going to happen there with the start? But it's kind of the Jalen Johnson breakout year wasn't last year because of the injuries. I think people are looking to him to be that second option on the floor behind Trey with the departure of DeJounte Murray, where I just think Jalen Williams at that pick around the 30s, it's just safe as houses, great value, going to return. I know the phrase sucks, like he doesn't hurt you anywhere, but he kind of really doesn't that much. Like he's so good across the board. Like I love that for him. So for me, I think he's the safe pick. And I love that pick because I'm a big J-Dub fan. But I think people will just jump at the upside because, there's these guys in drafts like, oh, the upside is great. And they'll draft for upside. But he hasn't given us like an 80, a 78, a 75 game season before. If Jalen Johnson can this year, even though he dings you on things like free throw percentage, I see the appeal, but I think I'm a J-Dub truther.
I have Jalen Williams ahead of Jalen Johnson myself. Like I was pretty disappointed in Jalen Williams in the playoffs, but like if we're gonna make our calls on what happens in the playoffs, like there are plenty of players we would never, like D'Angelo Russell's like wouldn't be in the top 200. Like there are plenty of guys who just can't do that, but that's not what this is about really.
Finals harder?
Yeah.
Playoffs hard?
We wouldn't be considering Josh Giddey anywhere because like he just didn't play. Like there were just moments where he just wasn't getting minutes at all. Like this happens and then we go back to the regular season and everything's different. The playmaking with Jalen Williams is really intriguing because he's going to have to do that. Like he has to. And what I want to see from him is more threes. Like he's a 3-point shooter. Like he hits threes, but like I don't care if you're taking under 4 a game. Like like what did he take last season? Like an embarrassing 3.4 3-point attempts per game, and he shot about 43%.
And hashtag basketball actually has him at 3.2. How many of you got him for? I know they have him at 3.2 because I looked him up. He actually doesn't do any deficits on their thing. Like there's no.
What have I got him projected for this season?
How many 3-point shot attempts?
Let me have a look. Because last season he averaged 3.4. As I just bring this up here, I
would love to see him taking 4.5, 5.
Let's have a look.
Spreading that. That's the dream.
Bring my number up. I think his assists are going to go up. I think his usage has to go up. And now as I bring my projections up, I've got him projected at 4.5 a game. So he's gone up one extra 3 per game. And he only played also 31 minutes a night. Interestingly, the last 2 months of last season, 29.8 minutes per game. Yeah, I know. Yeah. So Jalen Johnson was injured at the end of last season, but Jalen Williams was just sort of chilling with some good numbers. Yeah. I would say that he to me is a very clear chance to do a lot more. I worry that doing a lot more, because again, he took only 14 shots a game last season and shot 54%. I worry that comes down, and 43 from 3 can very quickly become 38, and 58 from 2 can easily become 56. Like all those things can fall away. But I am. If you wanted to take, okay, let me put it this way to you, because they're back-to-backing at each other, 33, 34, but you're sitting at pick 25 and you don't like the options there. Like, which one of those guys would you feel better about at that spot?
I feel J-Dub. I feel 100% J-Dub. Like I said, like I think my first YouTube like discussion conversation was with an OKC fan last year, because I had J-Dub in the 40s. I think you had maybe around projected around the same. I had him in
like 51 last season. I think 51 or something around that mark.
Yeah, I think I had 45 was his best, and I probably had him about like 60. I'm like, I'm just going to see where it goes. But then again, that was before Giddey decided not to. The team last year, but we don't know this leading in. Like we don't know these things when we initially set out. So I had a guy going, "Why are you so hard on him? He's a top 25 player." I'm like, no, he's not yet. He will be good. And then he finished in the relative 30s value. So, but for me, I love J-Dub. So I'm a truther there. I think we get really into the upside of these players, and I think when we're looking for something around these, you can't lose your draft in the first 2 or 3 rounds, but you can do yourself a bit of a disservice. A guy who's like J-Dub, who is still going to be plus 520 maybe, even with the improved shot attempts, plus 810 from the line, those percentages are really, really attractive. And when you look around at Jalen Johnson, his could possibly be a sub 500 with more efficiency because of the volume that he's going to have. He's already probably a sub 750 guy. He doesn't hit that many threes. He's going to need to do the same, like you said, with J-Dub, and hit more threes to get that value. So I think for me, the guy who doesn't hurt me and who I like more it's Jalen Williams is number 1. But Jalen Brunson is the number 1 Jalen.
Yes.
And J-Dub is number 2.
So I've got the Jalen Johnson stats up on the screen. You're right. Like Jalen Williams had a better field goal percentage, and Johnson's numbers declined pretty hard at the end of last season. So I like him a lot. I've got some skepticism of where the shooting goes. But the last Jalen I do want to touch on here is Duren, because he played like 31 minutes a night last season. Jalen Duren, he's into year 3. He's a horrific defender for whatever reason. But like I've had this level of skepticism, and when I did my Pistons preview back with Locked On Pistons host Kuka Hill earlier in the offseason, I said, hey, is there any risk here? Is there any risk that they're not fully going to go into Duren, and the new management maybe wants a little bit more out of Isaiah Stewart. He said, no, I'm pretty sure they're fully into Duren. I said, okay, that's good to hear. I'm still not convinced. And then we got to media day, right? And they talked to Isaiah Stewart. He's like, man, I can't wait. I'm back full-time at center. I went, oh, all right. So that is what I assumed would happen, and I love that for the team. But that also means that Isaiah Stewart, who played 31 minutes a night last season, if Jalen Duren is going to maintain 30 minutes a night, that Stewart's now just an 18-minute a night player, seems really unlikely to me that he would, for this guy that they claim is the heart and soul of what they do, and he's so excited to get back to that. It's like now you're playing the same role as Drew Eubanks. That seems a little iffy to me. So I'm a little like, I don't know where I am with Duren.
It hurts the beef stew experience a little bit because he's just.
I don't care about that part.
You get the thing, and it's like everyone wants the beef stew. But look, I love Duren, and I think was Kookie hyped when Duren put out that like I F with Locked On Pistons? Was Kookie just like in every chat going, oh my God,
he jumps straight into our chat. He goes, oh my God, Duren said this. I need to find it. Because he didn't have the video at first. Someone else had the video. Nice. So he just went, oh my God, Jalen Duren just said this. I need this video. And he found it eventually and put it out where Jalen Duren's like, yeah, man, I F with Locked On Pistons. But
he's just walking off saying that too. He's like, by the way, before I leave, he just points. I mess with what you do and just talking about the organization.
Pointing at him, hey, cool. It's like, hey, what's going on? It was awesome. But like I said, like Duren played 29 last season, so that is 19 a game for Stewart behind him. And I don't know, given the fact that Asar Thompson can't shoot, Ron Holland can't shoot, Jaden Ivey can't shoot, Isaiah Stewart sort of can.
Jaden Ivey loves to shoot. He just can't.
Yeah, I'm a little worried on Duren. Not that I think he's bad. Not that I think he's not starting. I don't think Isaiah Stewart is starting. Let me get that out there because someone will misinterpret that. I do not think Isaiah Stewart is starting. I have no doubt that Duren will start. But 31 minutes starting, Matty, versus 27 starting versus a 24-24 split is a very different kettle of fish. So where Duren is going at the moment, which I don't know if you've got it off top of your hand.
I have. I'm around in the 60s. Duren. I have the latest ADP. So, wait a second. I have it on the roto. What am I doing? I have it up the roto.
Is it 54? I got him. Which is.
There we go.
Yeah, hey, on ESPN, his ADP is 96. Love it.
I'll take him on ESPN. You can't get better value than that for him.
Can't go wrong. 54, I'm getting to the stage where I'm going, because it's all about
hit the nail on the head.
Balancing
He's not a
risks.
defender. Yeah, 100%. Like this,
and he was though. He was. This is the thing that's annoying.
And then he doesn't defend. But this is the guy who, like, even in Team USA basketball camps, they're talking about how much of a good interior defender he is. We need this guy in international competition to lock up around the rim, like that big body. When like in those training camps, like you heard nothing but good words about Duren being in there, especially when he was playing with Cade. And maybe that was their team connection. But for a guy who's also not a great playmaker or a great passer around that area,
I think he's all right. I think he's actually better than average at that. I think that that's actually room for that to grow, but we'll see.
I think there's room for it to grow. I just don't think he's there yet. Whereas like a guy like Jarrett Allen around the same marker, I'd probably be more interested.
Way more security in Allen for sure. Like I don't 100%. As much as I think that Mobley Allen pairing is weird and at some point is going to end. Whatever happens to Allen, he's still going to be thereabouts on that team or another team, and we all know that the perfect situation would be getting him to the Pelicans because they need a center, but he's not 100% the perfect fit with Zion, but whatever. There's a safety in what he does, whereas I just don't. We don't know in Detroit. We don't know what's going to happen.
The only thing that intrigues me is that like Jalen Duren's actually a decent free throw shooter as well.
Well, so like, that's another one of those. I love when people bring up these things that I don't plan, and it's one of those things that we are all guilty of talking about. And you're right about Jalen Duren, right? But I need to be better at this, and I'm probably going to annoy the shit out of everybody mentioning this all season. Is you just said he is a good free throw shooter, right?
For a center.
No. Okay. That's totally cool. Like, even if he's not a center, he shot Jalen Duren last season 79% from the line, right? Yeah. So he did that. He shot 61 the year before. He shot 61 from like so. What we know about Jalen Duren is that he was bad and he became good. Which one of those is real? Like, he was good last season. Do I feel that he's a 79% guy moving forward every year? Maybe. But also, what if he's not? What if that goes back down? Like, I'm going to have a look at how many total free throw attempts that he took. It was 181 that he took free throw attempts.
How many did he take the year before?
That is a really good question. Let us double
check. Because if it's 181...
157.
So he took more last year and the percentage was better. So maybe he has put in work on his technique, and so we can give him that. But again, it's like your truth. It's like, with this whole arguing about fantasy thing. There's your truth, there's my truth, and there's somewhere in the middle is probably the real thing. Maybe Duren is, God, who knows if he escalates it more with more free throws. Like if he goes plus 800, that's just stupid, and we can't expect that, or we can't predict that.
This is the problem with free throw percentage, right? It was last season, right, the most variable category year on year. Usually it's steals, then free throws second, but last year free throws overtook steals. He was 143 out of 181 last season. If Jalen Duren goes from 143 to 120, let's say 129, let's say, which is 14 fewer made free throws. 14 made fewer free throws over 25 weeks is one made free throw fewer per 2 weeks. And then he becomes a 70% free throw guy. Then the big you're banking on to be a neutral to positive contributor becomes a volume negative. Then the value just
71. On that, it becomes down to 71.6.
Yep. And
so it's 7-10 shooter.
And if he misses one free throw a week, which is one free throw over 4 games during the week, that's 25 fewer free throws. He makes like 120 out of 180. He's a 67% shooter, and you're back to going, man, he's Rudy Gobert now without the blocks. And what have I done inside the top 50? Yep. So these are incredibly small numbers that we're talking about. This goes
back to the numbers, though. Like, if I was to give you a random pop quiz, again, things we didn't prepare for. I love these conversations. What's the center number? Like every mock draft that we've done a few together now, ones that we're doing. If I was to ask you, like, what's the round that centers go off the board? What's kind of like,
it's 8, isn't it? There's a run in 4 and there's a run in like 7 or 8.
Yeah.
And then
there's like this 4 and 5. There's that block, and then there's 7 or 8 and they're done. So if you're sweating bricks after 4 when they start to come off the board, and you're in the 5th round and you're looking at that zone, Jalen Duren just sitting there, and you're like, I've got to get a center. Especially if you, God forbid, you're in a 2-center league, you're like, I've got to get Duren, and because you want the best available. But I think it can hurt. I think it can hinder more than help. Because you've got DeAndre Ayton sitting there around the point. Take a roll on bloody Ayton, for the love of God.
The other thing that's really interesting with Duren as well, so we're going to wrap this up right now, is that, like, we talk about him averaging 79%. Of his final 36 games, he shot 83% from the line. So maybe he's just actually awesome now. Like, I don't know.
He's better.
It is all over the shop, and that is where we talk about, when I talk about things, and I discussed this with Mitch last week, and he was talking about why I put weightings onto certain categories, and it's because of things like this, of the variability. Is that, like, if we can go in and we can look at the numbers that Duren put up last season and go, Duren, and like you said, this is, the words that you said and that I say, and we say them automatically, go, he is a 79% free throw shooter. I go, he was, but
he was.
I don't know. Like, the variance in that is so wide that more, I just want to bring the awareness to people that if you're banking on that to provide that value, then you're in trouble. It might happen. It might not. It probably does. But if you're banking on it, you are increasing your risk portfolio, I guess, which maybe that's,
you can also, and you can, no, that's good, because you can bank on guys being bad, but you can't always, like, you can bank on your Nick Claxtons not being able to shoot free throws around that zone. Like, you can kind of bank on that. And if he hits them, great.
You can, but we could have sat here last season, right, Matty, and said, well, Jalen Duren's a punt free throw guy, 61% from the line. Like, it's going to hurt you. And then he wasn't. You go, all right. That's why I'm all that idea when people are like, you've got, like, Giannis, maybe Giannis is never good. But Giannis was 70+% at one point. Like, he was. Yeah. Like, I don't know if he's going to go back to it, but the idea that when you've got these guys that you are absolutely set in stone because this is what they do is just not true. And there are ways that this can vary on a day-by-day, year-by-year basis. And we've just got to be more flexible in our ideas about where the upside is, where the downside is, how much upside do you want to take, how much downside do you want to take, and how many blokes called Jalen is too many on your team.
Never enough Jalens, mate. Never enough Jalens.
Matty, I'm going to let you go here. Enjoy your time off the school holidays, and thank you for this discussion. Again, give us a quick plug of the old Insight and what's going on over there.
Mate, like, subscribe, thumbs up, all the stuff for @InsightFS on where you get all your social medias and on X. Make sure you like and subscribe to YouTube like you do for this one. Just like the video down below for Josh, because, you don't have enough, Josh. We need more. Do the same thing for over us. For Insight, I am @MBAGWiz on X. And shout out to everyone. Thanks very much. Guys, get hype. Fantasy preseason's here. Fantasy's around the corner. It's a great time to be alive, mate.
It is a great time to be alive. It is a great time to be talking about the NBA. And Matty, we'll be chatting soon. Thanks again.
Thank you.
And that is it. So, if you are still waiting here, Matty gave a great idea for you to double bang and thumb it up and leave your comments down below. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.